Matthew Arnold remains one of the most important figures of Victorian English literature, but the poems of his that continue to live in our culture 150 years later are really just down to one. Dover Beach was first published in 1867 in a collection titled New Poems, although Arnold had been working on it for 15 years or so before then. It suffers from many of the limitations of conventional British literature of the mid-1800s, but it also has the strength and subtlety that draws on all the great classics of the Western canon and hints at everything that will dominate literature in the coming modernist era. The sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits, on the French coast the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand, glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air, only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles, which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then begin again, with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. The sea of faith was once, too, at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. Ah, love, let us be true to one another, for the world, which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. He's got some chops. This has some real beautiful language going on here. You can dismiss it to a degree as mediocre Victorianism. It's a melancholy mood piece of great convention. It is an elegy for human faith lost in the inevitable flow of time. You see a recognizable influence of Wordsworth and Keats in its wistfulness and thwarted escapism, and there is a conspicuous reference to the ancient classics in there as well, which any British schoolboy would have known very deeply from his educational years. That last stanza, that famous last stanza, that apostrophe to love, that begins on a note that could be ironic, as the romantic yearning for escape is unrealistic in the face of the ceaseless undercurrent of decomposition, which is what the first stanza is all about. That sea churning and chewing constantly at the shores of Dover. But that passage could also be seen as fully sincere for its willingness to play the part of a tragic hero, doomed to fail, yet striving anyway. There's something noble in that we respond to. That one line in the first stanza, tremulous cadence slow, bears Arnold's reflexive classicism. It's called a poetic hyperbation, the rearranging of the word order, but it's particularly common in Greek and Latin, especially when the word slow refers to a kind of delay. So they delay the word. This is not all that difficult, but it also shows the kind of poetic language that Wordsworth and Keats and the Romantics generally had tried to get away from, those curious poetical phrasings that just you hear them and you know you're listening to poetry. And they also become verboten of sorts in the modernist era, where the modernists, Eliot and those guys, are always stripping those sorts of little curly cues out of it. But this is much more of a convention of the Victorian era, and culminates a little bit later on in the aestheticism of the decadence. So you can see him toggling between these eras, I think, very significantly here. The sound of it also is very euphonious. It is very tremulous, cadence, slow. The fact that it is about cadence that gives it a kind of steady, momentous, but not necessarily progressive character to it. It sounds like the shore. It sounds like the sea. It sounds like waves crashing and receding, tremulous, cadence, slow. It is a great sound effect more than a great line of language, let's just say. Recurrence of uncertainty is the primary element going on here, the primary action of the poem. It is a uncertainty about the future primarily. The religious belief, faith, which had been for so long a bulwark of Western civilization, is starting to erode. And this is notably in the mid-1800s. Evolution is starting to question a lot of long-held beliefs. Skepticism generally is starting to question a lot of long-held beliefs. And materialism is starting to overshadow a lot of the traditional ways of living and thinking and believing of British, European, and world culture at the time. The Industrial Revolution has turned everybody into pragmatic realists, and they want to see real things in the real world, and all the other stuff. Well, we'll go to church on Sunday like we're supposed to, but realistically, let's just talk about business today. Hard materialism. What can I touch? What can I feel? What can I know for certain? And Arnold writes this while the English culture is largely riven by the Oxford movement, the split between people like John Henry Newman wanting to split off from the Church of England and make it, well, not at first, but try and tug it more towards the direction back towards Catholicism. And eventually John Henry Newman becomes a Catholic, and later on we'll get Hopkins doing the same. This split in the church is showing the fault lines running through the culture and opening it up to further erosion. That Church of England is another bulwark institution of the culture that Matthew Arnold is suggesting is so important and needs to be preserved. Matthew Arnold had certain reservations about religion, and he writes about them on his own time. But this is a concern of his belief that it is an institution. The Church of England is an institution, and to see it under assault, to see it withering away, is concerning, because it's leaving everybody else in a crisis of confidence in the world, when everything that they took for granted is slowly disappearing. Now, this is all part and parcel of the modernist movement. There are conspicuous mentions of wasteland imagery, just like Eliot. At the end, we get the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, an illusion, notably, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain, which is a wasteland. Arnold gets criticized by many for some of his poetic effusions, for some of his poetical language. Some of his lines ring a little false, and he doesn't always he doesn't always hit the mark with the language that he's actually using here. And that repetition particularly has come under some assault by critics, nor this, nor that, nor this. It is a purely negative definition of the imagery. But it's more than that, because it is a callback to Shakespeare. That nor, he cites it 5 times. There are 5 instances of nor in that, and it does seem a bit much. But then you just have to remember the lines in the closing scene of King Lear. King Lear delivers 5 nevers when he is carrying in the body of Cordelia at the end. Never, 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 never. It is heartbreaking. And yes, it is too long, but that's the point. It's so excruciating to experience one after the other after the other. And you get that relentlessness of the sea called back here, the relentlessness of the erosion, of the negative influence. Never, nor, that constant concession of what had been so impregnable before. Now, Arnold began writing this poem while on a ferry from Dover to Calais, in the southern tip of England to the northwestern beaches of France, for his honeymoon in 1851. He was about 28 years old. He had published a single volume of poetry just a few years before, and he was only 6 months into his 36-year career as a schools inspector. His life was beginning, and yet his thoughts lingered on what was ebbing away, what he and the culture was losing. This temperament of being out of step with conventional expectations is an almost universal characteristic of every great artist who has ever lived.